Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Own Your Money, Don't Let Your Money Own You. My name is Jason Butler, and I'm the Head of Financial Education at Salary Finance. Now, if you didn't know, Salary Finance is an employee benefit that's available to you. And here at Salary Finance, we're on a mission to get people out of debt and into savings and building financial freedom. Now, we offer products including affordable loans, which are repaid through your salary, as well as the ability to save money directly from your wages as well. Now, in the short webinar we got today, which is about 30 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about owning your money and not letting your money own you. And I'm going to talk about some of the best ways to change your relationship with money so that you can move from being a borrower, if you are a borrower, to a saver, and being able to cope with unexpected costs in life, as well as achieving the other goals that you want, which for most of us is becoming financially free. Now, Francis Bacon was a writer in the 1600s, and he wrote that money makes a great servant, but a poor master. And we want to make sure that you are master of your money and your money is working for you. So let's get straight into today. Now, we're all at different stages in our life when it comes to money. And we've all got different values and different lifestyle needs and priorities. And there's no right or wrong with this. It is just what it is. So it's very difficult to apply a one-size-fits-all solution in terms of how you should manage your money. But there are some very simple principles that we can share and best practice, if you will. And I'm hoping that from some of the little nuggets and angles that I'm going to share with you today, there might be one or two things that might help you be better with money so that you can achieve all that matters to you in life. Now, there's no doubt at all that money is, if not the number one cause of stress, certainly a main cause of stress. And long-term stress, if it's not dealt with, if you have stress over the long run, it can start having an impact on your mental and your physical health. And obviously, there are situations where people who have mental health or physical health problems go on to experience financial problems, perhaps because they've lost their job or their ability to earn money. But the reality for most people is that it's an undercurrent that is always present. And I'm going to tell you how to perhaps cope with that. Now, at Salary Finance, we devised a concept called the Financial Fitness Score. Now, the Financial Fitness Score is a way of us assessing, or a way of helping people assess how financially fit that they are. And there are 5 levels here. So score 1 is you're completely not in control and you feel overwhelmed. Score 2 is you've got no freedom to enjoy. I mean, you may or may not be in control, but you can't really enjoy as much as you'd like. Number 3 is you've got some limited ability to cope with financial shocks and curveballs and problems that might happen. 4 is you're beyond that. You can cope with sort of curveballs and you have a plan in place, but you're not completely financially free. And score 5 is when you're completely financially free and money doesn't cause you a problem. And it's no surprise to see that as you move up the financial fitness score, the percentage of people who worry about money reduces greatly. Now, the UK average, we surveyed over 10,000 people who were representative of the UK workforce recently, and we found that the average score was 3.1. So it brings me on to the first question, the first poll question. I want to see how well you think you are. So what do you think your own financial fitness score would be? Okay, would it be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? So if we just go back to that slide I just showed you there, I want you to now choose. I'm going to launch the poll. I want you to choose where you think you are on the financial fitness score. Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll now. Let me know. The poll's been distributed. Click where you think you are. Okay, that's good. Right, we're just about to close it. You've got a few more seconds. Okay. Right, and that's it. We're done. Okay. Right, so that's interesting. So the results are 6% of you don't feel in control, number 1. 11 feel like they're number 2. 39% feels a 3. 44% feel they're a 5, but no one feels that they've got to number 5. Sorry, that's number 4 is 44%, and no one feels they've got to 5. Well, that's fine. Now, interestingly, that's a bit different to the distribution that we found, because we found that 31% of people score about 2 and 41% of people score about 4. So that's kind of slightly different from the national average, but every crowd of person is different. So let's just move on. Now you can do your own financial fitness score after this webinar. It takes you literally a couple of minutes to answer some questions. You don't have to put any personal details in unless you want to put your email in to get a diagnostic to tell you how to improve your situation. Just go to that web address there, salaryfinance.com/financial-fitness-score, and you can do your own score. So that's well worth doing. And the good thing about that is you can keep doing that each year. Look like a blood pressure test just to see where you are. Okay, sorry, I'm racing ahead of myself. Sorry about this. Getting too excited. I just want to touch on this issue of money troubles versus money worries. Now, money troubles is essentially when you have real practical day-to-day money problems. You can't pay your rent, or you're in troubled debt and you can't keep up repayments. If you have money troubles, you need to speak and get proper one-to-one free debt counseling advice. And you can find that from either your Citizens Advice Bureau or go to the Money Advice website, and there will be a web chat facility where you can find free debt counseling advice near to you. But most people don't have money troubles, they have money worries. And money worries is an emotional state where you're concerned about things that might happen. They're negative money emotions and anxieties about things that could happen to you that have a financial context. And for most of us, they are irrational. And you've got to understand really that unless you get control of those worries, it's going to weigh you down. Now, in terms of reducing money worries, it's about feeling in control of your money, being able to cope with, as I say, curveballs and setbacks, and also to feel on track to become financially free and secure. Now, the level of well-being, we've sort of shown it like this, because essentially what you have to do is you have to secure your present. So in order getting organized, knowing what you've got, where it all is, and what's going to happen with your money, managing any debt that you have, including expensive debt or debt that needs to be repaid quickly, being able to deal with a crisis, that's your foundation. Now, once you've got that sorted, it's easier then to start thinking about saving for medium-term goals, or reducing mortgages, or preparing for when you can't or don't want to work, which is about improving the future. Now, it's not a case of just putting off planning for the long term until you've got the present sorted, but emotionally and psychologically, it's easier to deal with the longer term when you've got the shorter term sorted. But I would strongly recommend that you have what we call concurrent goals. And concurrent goals mean that, okay, we may be building up an emergency reserve or paying off short-term debt, but that doesn't stop us being part of our pension scheme at the work, or paying a bit more into our pension scheme. You need to have concurrent goals, because otherwise you'll spend forever always dealing with the short term and never making any long-term plans. Now, I just want to, first of all, another poll question here, just to get a quick idea of where you are when it comes to an emergency fund. So I want to know how much immediately accessible cash that you can get your hands on literally within a day or so without having to borrow, that you don't have to ask anyone, and there's no notice period. You can just get your hands on it. So I want you to choose between those 5 options. I'm going to launch the poll now, and please choose one of those. Okay, we finished. Okay, let's just sorry, just bear with me a moment. I'm just trying to, yep. Okay, close. Right. Okay, so let's have a look then. We've got 20% of you haven't got anything. 10%'s got between £5 and £1,000. 20% between 1,000 and 3. 10% between 3 and 5. Oh, and 40% if you've got over 5,000. So look, do you know what? Well done, all of you. Well done. There's lots of reasons why you might not have any cash savings or a very small amount. So don't beat yourself up on that, because it does happen. I know from my own life, we have sometimes heavy years where we end up burning through cash that we didn't expect to. So don't be het up with that. It's just to see where you are. Okay, and your cash reserve is an important judgment, really, because being able to put your hands on money to meet unexpected expenditures is the key thing that helps you reduce money worries. We all know what it's like. The car goes wrong, the boiler goes wrong, suddenly there's extra costs for your children at school when it comes to school uniforms you didn't expect, etc. And the key really is to think about aiming. If you don't have an emergency fund, don't get too hung up. Try and aim for what we call a starter emergency fund of between £500 to £1,000, because once you've got that, you can then build on it. But the ideal emergency reserve will depend very much on your personal circumstances, and obviously depends on your security of your employment, whether your partner is working, your level of expenditure. So it's very different for everyone. But as a very rough rule of thumb, you should aim to get in an emergency cash reserve somewhere between 3 to 6 times your core monthly must-have expenses. And one of the reasons why people fall into problem debt or have problems in relationships with money is because they didn't plan for the unforeseen. Because, you know, stuff happens. You just have to plan for it. We can't assume that we're going to always know what's going to happen around the corner. And the interest rate you get in your savings accounts for your emergency reserve is completely irrelevant, really. I mean, it's great to get 1 or 2% if you can possibly do that. But the most important thing is having access to the money so that you are in control. Now, I want to just talk about the longer term, because it's all very well thinking about emergency funds, but I want to just give you some perspective here about why the long term, you need to thinking about the long term now. Now, Sarah and Anil both started work at 21, and they both started at the same job with the same income. Now, Sarah, being pretty organized and logical and and wanting to get ahead, decided to save £2,500 a year, and she did that for 10 years, and then she stopped saving. Now, Anil, a bit of a good time guy, he just went through his 20s and didn't save a penny. Didn't save a bean. But he then decided, crikey, I got to 31, I'm going to have to start saving. So he then decided to start saving the same as Sarah, at £2,500 a year. And he saved that money for the next 40 years. Bear in mind that Sarah has stopped now and Anil was started. So he saved 4 times as much as Sarah. Now, interestingly, they both invested in the same global stock market fund. Now, I'm not saying that you should do that, and I'm not saying that that's right for you, but let's just pretend that they did. Let's pretend that they got 7% a year return. That might be a bit at the top end of the range, but I just want to illustrate the point. It is possible. That has been what stock markets have done. They may well do a lot less in the future, but let's go with that. And they just left their money, as well as the amount invested, until they were 70. And they met up for a reunion to compare each other's balance sheets, as you do when you're in your early 70s. And the interesting thing, they invested in the same fund with the same returns, but Sarah had invested only 1/4 of what Anil had invested, but she started earlier, even though she'd stopped earlier. Sarah ended up with 553,000, and Anil ended up with let's have a look now. A lot less. So I can't see the thing here. 534. So here's the thing. Despite he's only made his money grow 5 times, but Sarah's made hers grow 22 times, and that's because she started early and she had a longer period to allow her money to make money for her. And compound investment returns is this phenomenon that once we built some savings, and if we get a higher return than bank savings, that it actually starts making money on money on money. So the little takeaway here is take a long-term view, do some savings for the longer term, and try and get a little bit more than the bank, because tomorrow never comes. So let's just now move on. You've also got to understand with money what you can and you can't control. Now, the Stoics were around well before Christianity was ever even thought of. And they were ancient Greek philosophers, and they taught the idea that you can only control your judgments, how you think and feel about things, and your actions, what you do. Everything else in life will be as it is. So you could eat healthily and do exercise and still be run over by a bus or get some horrible illness or have another calamity. And it's the same with money. You can't control investment markets. You can't control inflation. You can't control Brexit. And I promise you there'll be no resignations during this webinar. I promise you. I'm here to the end. And the issue for you is you've just got to focus on those things that you can control. Now, what you can control and what you need to focus on is not your savings rate, which is what we hear about, but your spending rate. That's the proportion of your money that you spend other than saving, because you can't save anything unless you've built some surplus. And so therefore, the only way to get your spending rate lower is either increasing your income, reducing your spending, or a combination of the two. There's no magic to this. And if you're always crowding out, your spending is always crowding out your ability to save, you'll never build wealth, you'll never build resilience, and you won't be financially secure. Now, I know what you're probably thinking is, yeah, well, you know, if I can only save 25 quid, what's the point? Here's the point. It's a bit like exercise. Don't go do a marathon if you haven't done exercise for 10 years. Go for a swift walk 3 times a week. Then do a swift walk 5 every day. Then perhaps do a walk and every other day, perhaps do a faster walk, and then perhaps do a run. So it's getting going and telling yourself that you're a saver, not a spender. And I'm going to show you a few ways that you can do that. There is an interesting thing, is that once you've created some surplus, it's probably going to create more happiness for you, because the studies show, this is a study from last year from Sun Life, the insurance company, and that we don't know if having surplus money makes you happier, or happier people just have more surplus because they don't spend as much. But I think there is a cause there, because that if you feel good about yourself and you feel secure in yourself, and you're not buying things mindlessly, and you're thinking much more intentionally about money, then there's a good chance that your happiness is meaning you're not buying impulse purchases and purchases that will help you bolster your own emotional sort of state, as it were. So there is a cause and effect. We're not sure, but happier people tend to have surplus cash. Warren Buffett, I love to quote Warren. You know, I mean, obviously the guy's I think the third or fourth richest guy in the world, but that's not the issue. The issue is he's very smart. And he says, don't save what's left after spending. Instead, spend what is left after saving. So it's this intentionality, and if it works for Warren, it works for everyone else. You can never get ahead if you're always crowding out your spending. And I want to just bring this thing about budgeting. Now, I know the B word is a little bit kind of non-cool. It's not a word that we like to really discuss a lot, because budgeting sounds like the sort of thing an accountant would do, or a boring person would do, and it's not the sort of thing you as a happening, you know, go ahead, fun-loving, getting the most out of life is going to do. Now, some of you might like that word budgeting, and you might well do it, but there is evidence that people who budget tend to be happier than people who don't. Again, we don't know if there's a cause or an effect there. We don't know which way around, but it does seem to be, that's again from the same Sun Life study, that there is a linkage there. So I want to move on to another poll question. You know, I like to see what the audience are doing here. I want to know whether you have a monthly and yearly budget that you follow. So I've got 4 questions here. So it's either no, you just spend what's in your bank account or a credit card. Yes, but I don't really follow it. Yes, and I mostly follow it, but sometimes I spend a bit more. Or yes, and I follow it rigidly. That's probably for people in accounts, probably. No, I'm joking. So let's just launch that poll and see what you say. Give your answers. Okay. There's no right or wrong with this. You know, it's okay, and don't, you know, be honest, because we want honest results. I don't know who's done what, so don't worry about that. Just okay. I'm just about to close it. Give you a few more seconds. You finished? Okay, right, let's go. Interesting. So there we go. We've got a third of you just spend what's there. Okay, so we've got room for improvement. So don't beat yourself up. We've got room for improvement. You can't get worse, can it? A quarter of you, you've got one, but you don't follow it. That's fair enough. That's really honest. I like that. In fact, that's the most common answer I get in my live events when I ask people to show of hands. 37% you follow it, but occasionally you go off piste. That's quite okay as well. 7% of you follow it rigidly, and you know, well done for you. But that's a very small number of people. So here's the thing: there we got over 56% of people who either don't have a budget, or they've got one but they don't follow it. So here's the first takeaway. Right, we're going to come on to this, is if I can change the terminology for you and motivate you to think about budgeting and show you how to do it, it doesn't have to be perfect, then you're going to make a massive difference to your ability to save and your ability to build resilience and future wealth. So let's just move on. Okay, so the first thing I think we need to do is have a reality check. When I used to advise individual clients, I used to sort of say, right, okay, we need to look at what you've got, and then we need to look at where you want to go, and then we need to work out what actions you need to do. So the first thing for you is just work out what you're what you're spending. And you can, the simplest way of doing this is download just a paper budget. You can go to the Money Advice website or the Salary Finance Learn website and download a budget that you could just print out and do longhand. And in fact, the studies show that doing a longhand budget really makes it real. And I'm going to show you the power and the value of you putting some time aside to do that. If you just worked out your budget, and when I say work out your budget, I mean all those ad hoc things that aren't monthly as well. All of the extras. Don't feel there's any judgment here. You just need to get the truth. So you need to work out what you're spending and why. Now, one of the ways to approach budgeting when you sit with your budget is what we call zero budgeting. This concept of starting with the concept you're going to spend no money on anything. And we know that that's not feasible because we've all got to eat and live somewhere. But if you start on the idea that for you to spend £1 on anything, it has to earn its right. So it's this intentionality. So I'm going to show you 2 ways you might want to think about doing that. Now, there's a great online and app-based system called You Need a Budget. Now, You Need a Budget, what's great about You Need a Budget is it makes it easier for you to budget. And there are 4 key pillars that they teach, and it might work for you. One is that you give every £1 that you have a job before you get the money. And when we say a job, it may be, putting some money aside for the holiday, paying the rent, paying towards my future, my financial freedom. Notice I didn't say retirement or pension. Paying towards my financial escape fund, the saving for my wedding, buying a house that we can live in fund. Whatever it is, you give every £1 a job, whether it's consumption, savings, or debt repayment. The second thing is that you have to embrace your true expenses. So I mentioned before, being honest about where the money's going. We do have ad hoc money. You might pay your car insurance yearly to save, obviously, having to pay the interest. So you need to put that money aside each month to make sure you've got that money there. The third element of that concept is that you need to roll with the punches. Stuff happens. You sometimes deviate from your budget, and that's quite okay as long as you know why and you know the implications, because life doesn't go in a straight line. And the fourth thing, and this is the most sort of freaky things to get your head around, you need to try and age your money. And what that means is once you start spending money that you've held for more than 30 days, whether that's in your current account, a second current account, a savings account, you start to have a psychological control. You start to exert something over your money, which is magical. So it means that you go into each pay period where you've got the money to meet expenses. So the older your money can be in your hands, the more in control you're going to be. Okay? So I really commend you to have a look at that. They do a trial. It's not for everyone. Now, this is another way that this is a system that I developed which works for me, and this is before apps came out, and it's something I would highly commend to you if you don't want to use an online system or you want to just sort of have a sense check. So what you do is you think of yourself as 3 people. There's the basic you for your core living costs, and I recommend about 50% of your money goes into that. There's the future you, which is for debt repayment and future savings, including your pension contributions, and I recommend about 20% for that. And there's the fun you. This is my favorite you. This is the luxuries, the hobbies, the holidays, the coffees, the drinks out with mates, the extra clothes that you don't really need, whatever it is. And it's okay to budget for fun. And the idea here is that, if you're living in an expensive city, or you're in a place where, you're at the beginning of your career, or you've had a divorce or some other calamity that's put you back a bit with your expenses, then it's okay for your basic costs to be higher than 50%, but just make sure that your future you and fun you is allocated sort of about 40% to future you and 60% to fun you, whatever's left. And what you do here is you're paying the future you out of your savings first, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So that goes out first before anything else. And one of the ways to ring fence the fun you money is moving it into a second bank account. So whether you take out a new bank account with your existing bank, or you start one of these new Starling, Monzo, Metro, whatever it is, app-based banks, but what you're doing is you're spending down the amount that you've allocated to fun. So if one week you spend a bit too much on going out, you have to spend a bit less the next week, or you have to bring the money from another fund new category. So the key here is about being intentional. So I'm hoping the smart spending system might just help you think about that, and you'll be able to download that from the Salary Finance website. Another thing you can do to get ahead and also just sort of turbocharge your savings or investments is selling off unwanted clutter. The average person's got £2,700 of rubbish. Another great thing to think about looking at, if you qualify for it, is the Help to Save scheme. This came out at the beginning of October, and it is actually something that Salary Finance will be able to facilitate early in the new year through your employer. And this is a government scheme that for people who qualify for universal credit or other benefits, and I'll give you the website in a minute, you get 50% bonus from the government without any risk to your capital and complete access for the first 2 years and the next 2 years. And it doesn't matter if you put the money in and take it out, the government will still give you your bonus at the end of 2 years and at the end of 4 years on the highest amount you've saved in the previous 2 years. Highly recommend that. There's the website address. Even if you don't qualify, there may be someone in your family or one of your friends who does qualify, and you only need to qualify for the with the earning situation at the time you open the account. So this is just a no-brainer if people who qualify aren't taking this account out, and it's up to £50 a month. So it's not enormous sums, and you don't have to pay it every month. But please tell everyone, bore them to tears about Help to Save, because it really is too good to be true. It's unbelievable. It won't last. Another option for you, and this is available through Salary Finance, is that we can help you save by having the money deducted. So if you don't qualify for Help to Save, or you don't want to open an external savings account, or you don't trust yourself to pay it out of your own account, then you can have money deducted from your earnings before you receive it, and it's paid over to an account with the Yorkshire Building Society, gets a competitive rate of interest, and it's fully secure and it's fully protected, and it's completely separate from us, it's separate from your employer, and you can have access to it at any time. And because it's coming out of your savings, it's gone before you've had it. Really, really worth looking at. Another great tip for you is if you do have savings and you want to get the best rates, and whether it's notice accounts, instant access, cash ISAs, whatever it is, Savers Friend is a great service from Moneyfacts, where they send you a weekly digest of what's happened on savings accounts to keep you, so that the cash that you are holding, perhaps longer term than just your emergency fund, that you can keep that, excuse me, at higher interest rates. And I get this every week so that I can make sure my family's cash is working for itself, because even if it is cash for the short term, you still want it to produce a bit of return if possible. And there are new accounts opening all the time. Here's another thing that might help you. You might find it difficult at the moment to think about saving or saving more or investing more. But if you commit to saving more tomorrow, it might make it easier for you to actually get ahead. And one of the things you can do is say, okay, I'm going to save some or all of my next pay rise, or some or all of my bonus, or I'm going to redirect any savings that I make from, say, a loan repayment. And we have people who've got loans through Salary Finance deducted loans. When they finish their loan and we contact them and say, would you like to now start saving? We're getting quite a number of those people directing their 50, 70, 100, 150 pounds that they were paying into their loan into saving, into a savings account, just to build that cash buffer. Now, if it's for very long-term situations, then you may want to look at sort of stocks and shares, ISAs and stuff like that, and or increasing your pension. And if you're not in your employer's pension scheme, or you're not getting all the maximum free money from your employer, then I commend you to contact your pensions department and really do that, because it's just a no-brainer. The cost to you in terms of lost money and lost returns is going to be enormous. And one thing about planning for retirement, or when you can't or don't want to work, is it's not optional. It's going to have to happen, and it's the most expensive goal. So I just want a little challenge to finish off on. Could you reduce your spending by £3? £3.33 a day. Now that is £1,000 a year. Now, if you could, you would be able to get ahead. And all you need to do is, I want you to think about spending 1 day every quarter dealing with your personal finances, even if you've spent, a quarter of a day each, a third of a day each month or whatever. But a day of intentional planning, reviewing, and looking at ways of either reducing what you spend or spending less on what you have to buy. Because if you spent a day every quarter and you save £250 every quarter, and you work 230 days a year, that's the same as earning £57,500. And if you save more each quarter it will be even more. I have saved in the last year nearly £2,000, whether it be broadband, mobile phones, whatever you name it, increasing interest rates, reducing costs on investments. So that's like earning £120,000 a year. So before you worry about doing overtime or trying to get a pay rise, look and use your time intentionally. And just £3.33 in a bank account over 15 years would be nearly £20,000. If you've got a bit more investment return, say 3.5% over inflation, that will be about £29,000. And the longer periods and the higher returns, it'll be even more. So it does add up. Don't poo-poo. It's a good use of your time, even if it's not sexy. So I just want to finish off on basically just a quick story to hearten you, so that you don't feel this is beyond you in terms of you can build wealth. Ronald Read was a petrol pump attendant in the United States, and he never really earned much money at all. And he worked there for, I think it was about 38 years. And he then decided towards his latter part of his working life to become a maintenance man at a big department store. And, he saved and he lived a very modest lifestyle. And when he died, unbelievably, everyone was completely bamboozled by the fact that when he died, he left £8 million portfolio, which he left to the local hospital and a library. And he really put it down. There was a number of things. First of all, he lived frugally. He didn't spend a lot of money. He had the same pickup truck for 20 years. He saved his money, and he invested primarily in stock market investments, and he held them forever. So the point here is, I'm not saying you've got to live like a monk. I'm not saying you've got to invest all your money. I'm not saying you've got to put all your money in the stock market. But the point is this chap didn't ever really earn much money, and he still achieved great things. So it's not about being the richest person in the cemetery. It is about you having the life that you want, and savings and investing and being in control and having resilience and being financially free is up there with eating, breathing and sleeping, and I commend it to you. So we're here to help you at Salary Finance. Your employer will give you access to our new financial education website and tools. You can also open the Save account through whatever portal your employer provides. We'd love to help you on your journey. Before I go, have we got any questions? Let's have a look. Okay, all right. This first question here is, I've just got enough income for the basics. How can I possibly save? Okay. Well, I think, as I said to you before, I think the thing here is, first of all, invest in yourself to increase your earnings. And that's from Chrissy, sorry. So Chrissy, I think the best thing you can do is invest in yourself to increase your income. And it may be just you've got to be patient until such time as your income has increased. The other thing is check the entitlement to any benefits you may have or tax credits through entitled.com. So Entitled To is a website that will tell you what benefits you may be entitled to. And the other thing is that perhaps just wait till you get that pay rise. It may be just that you need to wait. Right, we've got Jags here. Jags has said, let's have a look now. Sorry, forgive me, it's a very small window. Do you think it's better to start investing after you put aside 3 to 6 times your monthly expenditure? Hang on a minute, sorry. I think first and foremost, I would build the starter emergency fund. That's the first thing I would do. I would get at least 500 to 1,000 ahead. I would also make sure that I haven't got any problem debt or expensive debt. And if I have, I would replace it and see. I mean, obviously, Salary Finance will give you a quote to see if they can beat anything you currently do, which they normally would do. So I would do that first. But I don't think you want to have the optimum savings account before you worry about sort of building and saving, because otherwise long-term investing doesn't happen. Let's have a look now here. We've got something from Dave. Do you not provide more information about investing in the stock market? Is it too great? Let's have a look. Well, we don't provide investment advice, and we are very careful not to stray into that area. What we will be providing on the new financial education website is a series of very short videos. We've got the season 2. We've got 3 seasons. The second season is called Building Personal Wealth, where I explain to you the characteristics of different investments and the risk and returns you can expect, and the pros and cons of that. So that will be available shortly. Crikey, we've got a lot of questions here. I'll see if I can squeeze one more in. Is it to go back to studies when you were 40 and start all over again? Career, I see you can earn more. No, not at all. I mean, look, everyone's situation is different. It might be the very best thing for you is that you should take time out. The question for you is financing it. And even if you had to borrow some money, if that borrowing of that money was going to yield a much better return, then that would be a good return on your money. Okay, that's great. Well, look, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. We will obviously try and give answers to those in future. Thank you for joining. Please give great feedback if you like it. Tell me what you like, what you didn't like, and join us on our next webinar next month, which is all about the new you in 2019, where we'll share new tips, ideas, and concepts.